Or like there's magic meat. You don't have to kill anything.
Hello, everyone, and welcome.
We are
Identities. Group of folks leaning into our progressive Christian imagination. I'm Bonnie.
I'm Casey.
This is Rajiv.
And I'm Jeff.
On the first and third Tuesday of every month,
we provoke conversation for shifting perspectives
on theology and culture.
Thank you for joining us. This week, we are continuing our conversation on beyond the binary of deconstruction and reconstruction. And last time we heard from Debbie Glander and a little bit about our own stories of waking up and what that was like for us, the alarms that went off that indicated to us that something's just not right and we needed to make a change. And this week, we're going to kind of explore that a little more deeply. We're going to talk about what happens right after. When you wake up and sort of that shame rushes in, like all kinds of shame, the shame around the fact that you were there in the first place. And like, why did it take so long to figure this stuff out? How did you let people do these things to you? So it's like the other side of the shame that we experience, the shame that we might have experienced as a result of these high control environments, we experience as a result of staying in these high control environments or allowing people to harm us or the environment to harm us in the ways that it did. Sometimes it causes us to be sort of judgy and to kind of live in the realm of, I'll just burn it all down, but burn down anybody else who might also have anything to do with it. So we're gonna explore that a little bit today. We'll do it as gently as we can and also as authentically as we can. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. So whoever wants to help us get started, what do you remember about that experience in your own journey?
Well, I think that saying hurt people is really relevant for this. Thinking back to that time when I was when I was acting out, I can say that about myself now. It was awful. I was a terrible person. I was terrible to my friends, family. It was just miserable because it was just all overwhelming. I felt stupid, betrayed, and really sunk into anger and bitterness. So yeah, I was dangerous.
I think when we have these sorts of awakenings, we can be as zealous on the opposite end of the spectrum as we were when we were fundamentalists or evangelicals, right? That we want to tell everyone what pain this caused us, how hurt we are. And like Rajiv was saying, we want to sort of make other people feel the way that we're feeling. That also is not a healthy tool. I heard someone once say, speak from your scars, not your wounds. And when you are in that festering place, it's almost like you want everyone to bear witness to your wounds. In some ways, it's really not helpful, actually, because you're turning people off. In fact, it's almost like what you are projecting is exactly what's going to happen, right? If you are continuing to be so deeply angry, people will stop listening to you. And then you go into this spiral of nobody's listening. Nobody cares to what has happened to me. Why can't you see? Why can't you experience it? I know I was there for sure.
Yeah. When we were planning out these conversations, Bonnie, and we talked about this particular conversation, one of the terms you threw out was becoming less dangerous. And I'm still sitting with that. I think it's so important because, going back to what I said on our last episode, that idea of like being this empty vessel and just filling it with something new, that doesn't change our posture and the way that we approach stuff. And I think that, people in the deconstruction space, I don't know what we call it, deconstruction, post-evangelical, ex-evangelical, whatever we want to call this space, there's a lot of theobrogans, right? That's the term that the kids are using with this. And I was there 100%. And I think that has a lot to do with my place as a straight white male and this lack of humility and this status that I've had in culture and in my former religious context that put me in a place of teacher and presenting this information as if it was new information and not recognizing that it's only new information to me and that this information has existed. It has just simply been revealed to me. And perhaps I should shut the hell up and take some humility, because there's, we talked about the strategies and the manipulation and kind of those waking up moments. We take those with us. Like, I had to reevaluate not just my ideas, but my preaching style and what things that I was doing that brought that. And I would say that there was a lot of moments where I was a dangerous person in my deconstruction, because I had these new ideas and I was a child of God. I was a bearer of the truth, and I needed to come and tell everyone this new way and change and fix everything. And that's not to say that Reformation in the organizations that we're in isn't a part of that, but it's a big part in this being less dangerous, is just learning to listen. And not just know these new ideas, but, sit at the feet of people who have lived these ideas. I think that that's so important, especially for those of us here when it comes to, race and gender identity. And I'm speaking to those of you who are straight white males and you're listening to this, like, we don't have the answers, and we aren't the type of people that can impose in our deconstruction, because I think that we present our ideas in a way that the world is this level playing field, and we totally do not acknowledge that it is not a level playing field. And until it is, we can't impose these, whatever we want to call it, the Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson atmosphere where, well, it's logical, so therefore blah, blah, blah. I think a lot of people, I equate the white theologian to Thanos, right? Thanos logically was correct. You snap your fingers, the world's overpopulated, you get rid of half the people, and it's solved. Logically, that makes sense. But that's being a big, purple in the galaxy. You could go the opposite direction. Perhaps just as logical is, well, hey, maybe I'll just double the resources and I'll go the other direction, and then no one has to die. So I think that when we don't have humility and compassion in our deconstruction, then we can easily justify horrible things. And we see it happen all the time to varying degrees.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you just said, Jeff, because I think that's so true. And each of us has learned within these high control environments what to do with these overwhelming feelings. And when you begin to leave, you're going to have some really big feelings. Like, I remember having some huge feelings, and a lot of it was probably repressed because, my gender identity didn't really allow for me to have some of these big feelings like anger. And so when it bubbled up, it was a force that I wanted to direct it at anybody around me, just as a way to, I just didn't even know what to do with it. So I think there's that. There's not knowing what to do with the overwhelming feelings, but then there's also these modes that we've learned in this controlled world, that then we carry forward in our initial steps of deconstructing that are dangerous. It's hard to think of oneself in that way, and yet hurt people. And I don't think I could have skipped it. Like, I'm not sure that I could have skipped that period of time where I felt a lot of bitterness, because I needed to express that repressed rage. And it had been repressed for so long, I didn't even know that it was in there until I started to experience the freedom to express it. So the question is not always about how do you circumvent it, but how do you do it? How do you express your emotions without harming others in the process?
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Bonnie. And one of the things that is really helpful is some simple introductory language. Like, because if you just start venting to people that you trust, it can sound and feel like you're directing it all at them. when a simple introductory invitation was, I love you and trust you, and I could really use you. I really need you to bear witness to my pain and anger. Can you do that for the next 10 minutes? And it does something the way you frame it and that way that person receives it. You know, people can bear witness to it and hold it with you rather than feel like they're being attacked by it. But yeah, we have to have spaces to hit that release valve.
It's important to have a community of people who can hold your pain, who can bear witness to your experience. The other thing that I think also is important to note is how dangerous we can be to ourselves. So it's not just that we are dangerous to others with our sort of lashing out and our aggression, but it's how we might return to ourselves, our self-talk, our behaviors. You know, if you have lived in a high control environment for so long, you are going to want to lash out and live a very different life than you had lived before. And it might put you in situations that you never would have imagined yourself in. And if you don't have guides to walk alongside of you as you navigate some of these new ways of being in the world, it can become dangerous. It really can. And I think so that, again, just speaks to the importance of community. You know, I think of just growing up as a young gay man and the older gay siblings that I had that were able to, you know, teach me how to be safe in queer spaces, in gay bars. You never leave your drink alone. You always make sure you let people know where you're going at the end of the evening. You don't just go home with someone without telling somebody the name and address of where you're going. But when you have been locked up and not had these freedoms for so long, you just think you can go out. The movies are fine. You know, everything you've learned in a movie is fine. And it's not true. And so that's just one example, and I'm sure you all can share of other examples. But I know for me, the importance of having guides and community to walk me through what it means to be a free person, what it means to be a liberated gay person, having beloved community around me to process my pain and to still hold me accountable. I mean, I think that is one of the most important things that for so many of us, we don't want accountability because we think accountability means shame and rejection. That's not what it means. It's love in action. It's reminding you of your values and what is important to you. So I'll leave it there, and I'd love to hear from some of you about that.
Yeah, that's so great, Casey. Thank you, because you're absolutely right. Because what's necessary is to learn completely new forms of accountability. Like that, the definition of that word has to change. And also a different definition for community, you know, because if you're coming, especially if you're a young person and you are waking up, then you've likely led a rather deceptive life in the process of waking up. And there maybe are people around you that you don't trust enough to actually tell, here's what I'm experimenting with. Here are the doubts I'm having. Here are the questions that I'm following. So it's hard to believe that there are people out there who actually will hold that with you, because you don't know anyone who will hold that with you. Yeah, the whole process of becoming less dangerous or recognizing our danger to ourselves or others is to change the definition of those words, community and accountability. And that in and of itself is really, it's really challenging, because for me, all I could feel is shame and anger. That's all I could feel. Like the shell of myself, that's what it filled with. And I don't know, that may be a gendered response, or it may be more universal. I don't know, but those feelings were so intense that and that in addition to that, which I know is a gendered response, is not feeling worthy of being seen in my shame and anger.
There's a good book called The Velvet Rage, Overcoming the Pain of Growing Up Gay in a Straight Man's World, by a guy named Alan Downs. He's a PhD. And he talks a lot about just coming out, like the moment of noticing there's a difference between you and your family, right? So for me, it was playing t-ball, or even like playing flag football. Maybe you've heard me tell this story of like, the only reason I played flag football was because I could get a piano. And we lost the championship game, and my dad is like yelling at the refs. And I walk up to him and I say, can we leave and go get that piano you promised me now? And to see that look in his eye of like, we live in two different worlds. And the internalized shame that leads to rage for 8 years and years and years after that. And I think it's true. Like, in the same way, growing up evangelical or fundamentalist, like in these high controlled environments, we internalize shame, and it leads to either more shame or rage, or both. And learning how to channel some of that, or acknowledge what it is, naming it. I mean, again, this goes back to some of our conversation last time, Bonnie, around like having a self. If you do not have a self, you will always feel shame. And I think that finding a self then evokes rage, because you're like, don't tread on me. Don't push my boundaries. I've worked too hard to have these. And so all of this manifests in some way, right? That we are either going to continue to let people roll over us, we're going to continue to give more of ourselves with that servant's heart that was ingrained in us at such a young age, or we're going to push back, and we're going to just sort of bleed all over the people around us.
I mean, a lot of this, if it's stunted development, basically, that notion of differentiation, which is supposed to happen, sometimes doesn't happen because it's not really allowed to happen. And there's just tons of layers.
But doesn't that in and of itself inspire like rage? I know I remember feeling so ill-equipped to meet the world because of knowledge that was denied me about science, about philosophy, about just the thought trajectories across the world in general. So that was denied. And then also my developmental process was denied. So I was like, yeah, stunted emotionally, psychologically, cognitively. And I had a list of people to blame for that. And it just, just really, really made me angry.
Yeah. And I think, it's important to acknowledge, spoilers, our next episode is going to be really centered around community and what that looks like. But just hearing our stories, and for those of you that are listening, just acknowledging the paradox of how isolating this can be, and how we're acknowledging these things that are important to express, but also recognizing that you may not have a space to express that in. Our hope is that, our show is at least a little bit of a solidarity, like, oh, okay, I'm not alone. And of course, you can always reach out to the show via our email and social media links and stuff like that. But, we're not going to leave it here. So, be ready. We're going to talk about community and what that can look like. But you're not alone, even if it feels that way. But we also acknowledge that it feels like a bit of a cage, because some of the things that we are talking about, you can't do, because some of you may be still in the midst of these environments. And we certainly know how difficult that can be.
I think I just want to say to our listeners, beloved friends, be kind to yourselves. And know that there are going to be moments that you're going to hurt people, because hurt people, honey. It's just the way it is. When you do hurt those people, you can do what you need to do to ask for forgiveness or move the hell on. If it's someone that you feel like, whatever, let it go. But in general, be kind to yourself and find those places that trigger you. Listening to K-Love or whatever, some Christian radio station, is not going to be good for your progress. I can tell you that.
I'm having feelings.
That's right. Exactly. If there's, an Aunt Betty in your life who, every time she looks at you wants to let you know she's praying for your soul. Find people that can sort of be the buffer between you and Aunt Betty or whatever. But just know your triggers and understand that this is a process. We've been talking about this. We'll continue to say it over and over again. We should probably have like a bingo card for this 6-week conversation, but just know that it's a process. and be kind to yourself in the process.
Well, and look, our website is arenacast.com. If you need a place to vent and you don't have places or people you can trust or who may not be in a place where they can hear your rage, put it in writing, send it to us. We don't claim to have answers, but what I can guarantee you is we'll read it and we'll hold it with you. We may not give you a lengthy response, but we will hold it with you. We will hear you. So in that way, not only are you not alone in a sort of a abstract sense, you cannot be alone in a real sense. So arenacast.com, use that contact form. We will read what you write.
Yes. And also, I don't think it's possible to skip this part of the process and our feelings, I think especially like Casey was saying, wanting to have the servant's heart. And I know for me, I always thought that I would be the only one in the universe who could somehow transcend the bitterness and just sort of hop and skip from where I was into this new way of being. As hard as I wanted to be the one, as hard as I tried to be the one, I couldn't. And I don't think that probably anybody can. Like, that's just not how it works. It's part of the deconstruction. And I think Jeff mentioned last episode, have you really deconstructed? Well, I think part of the measure of deconstruction is, have you felt really angry? Have you wanted to just, set everything on fire? And that's okay. If you feel like that, that's totally okay, because it makes sense. It's logical.
Yeah. And verbalize it. Be angry. Like, we all missed out on stuff. It's okay to be angry about that. Like, when I was 21 and most of the people I know, they were, going to a bar, having fun, going to parties and stuff like that. I was in charge of a huge youth group at a borderline mega church. I was just trying to like get through the next service and all that kind of stuff because it felt like that's what I had to do. And I don't want to be too cliche in that we all missed out on the fun party stuff and all that kind of stuff, because that's not the only thing we missed out on. But if you missed out on it, acknowledge that. Be upset about it. Like, feel that. Because, part of this whole process and this binary that we're trying to get rid of is that these things are going to come and go. Eventually, you reincorporate these things into your stories in new ways, and you have a new lens on your past. But sometimes for a little bit, you just got to feel it and be angry with it and break up with it for a little bit and figure out how that's going to incorporate into your life, because we all have regret.
Do you remember what we're just for the sake of revisiting ourselves and maybe helping others to revisit their own experience? Do you remember some of those first triggers? Or even what are some lingering ones? That's another part of the question.
The language.
The language for me.
Yeah.
Say more about that.
Well, if God brought you to it, God will see you through it. Right? Or
the platitudes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all of those, right? I mean, all of that stuff that simplifies the complexity of our living. I can't with any of that stuff. It simplifies the suffering of others, of my suffering. It diminishes the real pain of people's lived experience, and it tells us that we should find meaning in our pain. Only we can do that. Nobody should get to do that for us. I can feel myself right now being triggered by that, that sense of, well, it's all, if God wills it, everything happens for a reason. I don't believe that. I tell people when they say that in church, I have people in my church who will say, well, Pastor, everything happens for a reason. And I say, well, things happen and we get to make meaning out of them. That's what I say. We get to decide what the meaning is. Not that they happen, that we are going to justify people's bad behavior towards us, or we are going to explain away a child with cancer. I refuse to go to a place of saying that everything happens for a reason. I think It happens. Life happens. It's hard. And out of those things happening, we have the ability to either bring them into our consciousness and form meaning around them, or we can say, that just really sucked, and leave it there.
I'm with you on there, Casey. Anytime someone, someone's talking about all the good things in their life and they say that they're grateful, I love that. But if they use the word blessed, it's automatically, I just have this very specific picture of who this person is. And I'm like, I'm done with you because I know what that means. I know what you're saying. I know what you're insinuating by saying that you're blessed. And it's just like, yeah, the language, it kills me.
Is that the hashtag for the episode? Hashtag blessed. I'm surprised because I've in recent weeks, I've had the chance to engage folks that I've maintained friendships with, and they've invited me into some small groups that they facilitate to talk about, our work as progressive Christian ministers, and was shocked that I wasn't as triggered as I thought I would be. So I'm grateful that something happened along the way where I can have conversations with folks without getting sucked back into it. But I think what the lingering trigger isn't what somebody believes or what their spiritual practice is. The thing that still flips the switch is when they start taking a supremacist standpoint, whether it's Christian supremacism, Baptist supremacism, even progressive supremacism. It's sort of like, yes, do your thing and be in relationship with other people doing their thing. But early on, it was all the stuff you're talking about. And the platitudes, platitudes like, Jesus, I just turn off. I'm like, I'm not going to really give this person a lot of energy. And I mean that, like, generally speaking, if I'm having a one-on-one conversation, I will really try to connect. Yeah, the platitudes, God willing. And my parents use that one all the time. They're like, God willing, we'll come see you. I was like, you just got to buy the tickets. I'm not sure what God has to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm coming to a place where I can see some of those terms are multi-layered and almost in some ways reclaim some of it, but in a very new and different way. But for me, it's the aesthetic. It's the look. It's the hair, the makeup, the clothes, it's just I don't know how else to say it except the aesthetic of kind of that evangelical megachurch aesthetic that other churches that are more on the fringe of evangelicalism, like Seventh-day Adventists, try to emulate, to try to be like the cool kids. And it triggers me every single time. I'm just like, I can't go in the room.
Is that why you don't spend a lot of time up here in Placer County with me, Pastor Bonnie?
So I love Placer County, and I can figure out a way to dissociate enough to be able to be in those spaces, but I still feel myself needing to do that
totally
in order to be present, which is not really present fully, So I don't know what that is. Maybe it's related to the supremacy that you're talking about, Rajiv, but I need to explore that more. And I think that's part of the invitation of a trigger point. And sometimes triggers are so overwhelming because we're taught not to have them, that if God lives in you, you don't have them. But as you begin to realize that it's very human and divine to have triggers, then it's information. Those are messages for us to know what to explore more deeply.
Well, I mean, the aesthetic, I think that's a really insightful comment, is there's orthodoxy around that too. Looking a certain way, sounding a certain way shows that you're actually on the right path.
Well, I would call it, and this is probably without a lot of careful thought, this is just my gut reaction, I would call it an aesthetic of inauthenticity. And that just anything that I perceive as inauthentic, I have no more time for. And it looks, the whole aesthetic to me just reeks of inauthenticity.
That's something really specific to my own journey that's happened in the last couple of months, partially informed by the pandemic, but it's around race and trying to acclimate and assimilate as I can't look like I'm an American, quote unquote, but I can dress like it, I can sound like it, I can do my hair like it. And one of the things, my mom is Tamil, so there's this kind of joke we have in Tamil circles, like, are we going to let our Tamil froze grow? Because we've got really thick, kind of curly, wavy hair. And I've just decided, I'm not going to do a whole lot to fight that anymore. I like showering, I like being clean, but I'm not going to try to shellac my hair into conformity to look like a New England person. And it's been fun because it's doing its thing. Yeah, it's a small thing in a way, but it's kind of a big deal because there's a lot of layers to it. And maybe the pandemic has freed us up from a lot of this bullshit.
Right. Well, and I think, Rajiv, that's an important note, is not dismissing it. Anything is a small thing, because the big things are overwhelming and cause us to run away from those triggers instead of finding our boundaries with how to approach them. And sometimes all we can do is start with the little ones, like the aesthetics and the language. And that's an important first step in order for us to protect ourselves from the danger of others, and in order for us to kind of begin that journey to do the least damage possible in our way to, through the rubble of everything that has happened in our lives. Because, Bonnie, you talk about aesthetics. I feel the same way, but the evangelical aesthetic comforting to me. It's the mainline aesthetic that I hate, that I feel is so inauthentic, like the gaudy church, high church stuff.
Talking about my clergy drag now. Don't you be talking about my clergy drag.
But it's taken a long time for me to reverse that and not and find that there were comfort points in my space. It's such how we're all in that unique journey and figuring things out. So I think triggers are big markers for us in order to determine what's dangerous to us and what causes us to be dangerous to others.
Triggers are your assumptions. And so it gives you an opportunity to discern, is this assumption based on actual real evidence that I need to then respond to? Or is this assumption based on an older wound that I need to tend to? I think triggers are where we're just projecting. Here are all these issues that I have with this particular thing without always carefully considering it. And it's super useful. It can be the best thing that ever happens. And also it doesn't feel fun in the moment, but it's super useful to, I started a trigger journal early on, and I still go back to that, and I can see growth in areas. I can see even regression in areas, and I'm wondering what that's about. So it's I think it's helpful to just keep track of those triggers. Don't lose them. Don't lose track of them, because they're a big part of who you are.
I would encourage folks as they are, on the journey towards understanding their triggers to, not just be kind to themselves, but to find a way to write something, right? Something I had to do was I put on a whiteboard a list of things that I knew for sure. One of them is, you are safe. You are loved. And every day as I walked out of my house, I had this whiteboard of things that I needed to be certain of in myself. I would just encourage people to, whether it be through journaling or a whiteboard by your door, make a list of things that keep you grounded in the truth of who you are. You are safe. You are loved. ... Whatever those other things are for you.
Yeah, I love that. This has been a really amazing conversation. I know for me, it's been an opportunity to loop back and pick up some things that I hadn't really thought of in a while, and also to really listen. So we hope that you were able to also, get something out of the conversation, and we would love to hear from you. To add your voice to this particular conversation, comment on the show notes at irenicast.com/184. Also on the show notes, you will find relevant links and a complete list of all the other ways to like, follow, and contact the show, including our mailing list. We hope that you will sign up to join our email list because we have an opportunity for you to listen to the full conversation that I had with Debbie Glander a few weeks ago. And also we'll be in touch with you about various programs that are upcoming. So we'd love to be able to stay in touch with you. Please sign up to join the email list on irenicast.com and check out the show notes, irenicast.com/184. And on the other side of the music, we are going to play a game called Underrated, Overrated. And this should be a lot of fun. Welcome back. We're excited that you are still here, that you've stuck around to hear us play a game that we've played before. It was a lot of fun in the past. We're expecting it to be fun again today, called Underrated, Overrated. Each of us will come up with something, some random idea or thing, and the rest of us will decide, or we'll tell whether or not we think it's underrated or overrated. So who would like to go first?
I'll go first. You know, we are all from Northern California. I think in general, Californians think that they don't just live on the West Coast, but they live on the best coast. And we take a lot of pride in our supreme burger here in Northern California, well, California in general, which is In-N-Out. And so I'm curious to know whether you all think that In-N-Out is underrated or overrated.
This is a good one, Casey. This is very good. Because I'm sure there are...
This might be... We might lose listeners for this, but...
It's overrated. I love In-N-Out Burger. Absolutely love them. But the craze over them that I see from time to time is just like, no, it's a burger.
Rajiv, I'm with you. Overrated. And I know that this is a debate. So like I've forgive me for this little rant, but I've tiered my eating out.
Yes, you've told me about this. Please share with the world, Jeff.
I have a tier system. So you have fast food, which I consider like the big chains. So you have, McDonald's, Carl's Jr., Jack in the Box, whatever. And then you have like upper tier fast food. So this is where people would put like In-N-Out. What are the other regional ones? Five Guys. Is Whataburger one of them?
What classifies them as upper tier?
Because they have a certain reputation about their food that stands up above just like a general chain. Like if I just wanted a quick burger, I'd maybe go to McDonald's or whatever. But like In-N-Out is kind of a different level, at least here regionally in California. And then everyone has their kind of upper level. And then you have dine-in, the bottom tier dine-in, which is like, Waffle House, Denny's, like whatever. And then you have
two of my favorites.
Right. Then you have middle tier dining. So like the chains, like maybe like Olive Garden or whatever. And then you have like upper tier. These are all just how I envision in my head. So in this space,
I feel like anybody who joins our newsletter list should get your tiered list, Jeff.
Tiered list. Yeah. I'd be willing to do that. I could talk for hours. Maybe I'll jump on Facebook Live if anyone wants to talk burgers and restaurants. But so this conversation to me falls in that upper tier fast food, like In-N-Out, Five Guys, Whataburger, all that kind of stuff. And I've thought a lot about this. Now, I will preface this by those of you listening. I haven't had all the regional places yet. But I think In-N-Out is overrated because when in conversation with these regional burger places, I think the king is Shake Shack. It is so much better than any other burger in the other one. And I like In-N-Out too. I'm with you, Rajiv. I love In-N-Out. I'll definitely go for an In-N-Out burger. But Shake Shack, the smash burger, the soft potato bun, the melted cheese, it is simple, it is perfect, and it is wonderful. And Five Guys is trash. They don't season their meat. It tastes like bland garbage. I'm saying that right now.
Wrong.
Five
my
Guys
God.
is trash. I would rather have a McDonald's cheeseburger than Five Guys.
That is
Oh,
wrong. That is
no,
inaccurate.
Five Guys is okay. I'd say Five Guys, other than your review, Jeff, is appropriately rated. But yeah, that was harsh.
I'm there.
Oh, when you know, you know.
There you go. Right?
Five Guys fries are superior.
They are.
I like their fries.
superior. Oh man.
But they're burgers.
Bonnie, what about you? What do you think?
I don't eat burgers, so it's a little. I mean, when I go to In-N-Out, I get a grilled cheese, but I really like the fries at In-N-Out, so I would say it's like appropriately rated. I don't have a whole lot to say about this. Actually, I can tell there are big feelings though.
Big feelings
from
about
some of
this.
my co-host friends.
I would agree that I feel like In-N-Out is overrated. Their French fries are actually I can only eat them if they put them in the fryer for a little longer because I hate how like flimsy they are. So yeah, I'd go with under or overrated also. So there you go.
3 Californians underrating In-N-Out and 1 appropriately rating it. We might get some hate from our own people on this one.
That's right. And the Bible verses kill me. Like honestly,
I thought somebody might ask about the Bible verses. I was like, you don't like those verses on your cup?
And I'm not a native Californian, unlike the three of you. You guys are like for real native. I've lived here since '94, so over half my life at this point. But yeah,
I was born 2 blocks from the original In-N-Out. That was just a drive-through.
Now I've never been to Shake Shack. Where's the closest one?
There's
Sacramento.
one downtown Sac. It's amazing, dude. You got to try
I think
it.
there's one in Roseville now also. Actually.
in the mall, but
All right,
it's
Bonnie,
sketchy.
let's go. I'm still eating burgers. I haven't.
I just get grilled cheese.
That's fine. You can
can't
get
eat
a grilled
cows.
cheese. It's lunchtime right now. Let's go.
I was just thinking that.
I have to. Yeah.
Their
okay.
frozen custard's really good too, but their burger, I don't think I think it's hard to match their burger. Now, I just want to let everyone know I'm excluding local places. Like
Sure.
Of course.
This is chain, regional, all that kind of stuff. That's a whole different tier system that would require a very complicated episode. And this is not a food podcast.
Look, we might
This is
actually get legitimate hate mail. Like we get the crazy emails, but we might actually get some legitimate hate mail for dissing on In-N-Out right now.
Right. We've said some like heretical things to some people, and we don't get much hate mail. The most hate mail I've gotten is on Divine Cinema when I talk about like media stuff. People have opinions about their, frivolous things.
While we're talking about regional stuff, a quick shout out to our people in the South. We did mention Waffle House, but a fast food place that I love is Zaxby's. They do chicken, and I mean, they're not Popeyes, but as far as like fast food chicken fingers and stuff, I wish they would open one out this way.
And those who are listening who might be out of the country, we would love to know what are the restaurants, the In-N-Out restaurants in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, what is underrated and overrated near you?
And to our Australian and New Zealand people, I've heard that their kangaroo burgers are a thing. Is that for real?
I have had kangaroo in Perth, Australia, and it was delicious.
Oh.
Yes, it sure was. Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Definitely a veggie burger if I was in Australia. So
That was only the first one, right?
Yeah. Who's going next? How about you, Jeff?
All right. I'm going to put out there binge watching. So the act of watching an entire season of a particular TV show
is underrated. I love the ability to just watch for hours on end if I want to.
Now, is that the definition of binge watching? To actually watch the whole season?
Yes. Or at least like a batch of episodes. Like you're
Yeah,
binge
like
watching.
3
But
or 4.
But I would say like close to a whole season. Like a binge watching is like you get through it.
I thought it was like when Netflix asks you if you're still watching.
Yeah.
Well, if you
Like,
get to
you
that
know,
button, then you've binge
You're
watched.
sitting there.
Yeah.
Okay,
You've been watching.
I've done that once or twice.
Well, it's not having to wait a week, right? I don't know. I'm torn on this.
I'm kind of ambivalent, so I'll say it's appropriately rated. Like if you're binge watching all the time, get help. You know.
No shame,
if you've
listeners. No shame.
And if you've never been watched, give it a try.
Well, one of the things I like to do is like I'll wait a few weeks. Like David Makes Man has just started back up on OWN, and I loved the first season. And so now we're into the second season, and so I've waited 4 weeks so that I can watch, 4 episodes at a time. I really like doing that.
I think it's overrated. I think it's overrated mainly because I always love that idea of watching simultaneously with others. Like The Handmaid's Tale, you can binge watch, I guess, because you could wait and binge watch. But for me, it's like, when is it on? Well, it's on Tuesday when the first episode drops, and that's just when I watch it. Like I set my time to watch it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's overrated.
I'm with you, Bonnie. I'm going to say overrated as well. Like there's certain things I like to binge, but and you would ask me 2 years ago, I would have been like, no, it's totally underrated. It's the best thing in the world. But when they dropped Mandalorian on Disney Plus and they just did one a week, I was like, what are they doing? But, and this is going to sound silly, but it was I watched the episode and they had, Baby Yoda or Grogu at the end and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, oh, my girl's got to watch this. So we watched the first episode together. And then we found this YouTube channel that gives like Easter eggs and backstory for all the other stuff. And then we watched that video. And now for every Disney Plus show, Marvel and Star Wars, we watch an episode. We will then go immediately to YouTube and then we watch the Easter egg video and then we talk about it like all week, like theories on what's going to happen. And it has been like some of the funnest, most like enriching, like hangout with my kids ever. Cause we just nerd out on this all week and we anticipate what's going to happen next and we speculate. And I was like, I like this. Certain things, like, I really like the show Ted Lasso. I'll binge that. It drops. It's a half-hour fun show. Like I'll binge. But stuff where you just like you want to open the mystery box a little bit and watch and commune and talk with others, I prefer to watch it week to week. I love it.
I would like to, before we leave this, suggest that Bonnie go to Divine Cinema, and I'd love to hear her take on Handmaid's Tale. Like I would love to hear your sort of thoughts about the show because I think it's a horrifyingly great show.
Yeah, me too.
And I never thought to ask you your thoughts on the show, and I think it would be great to hear from you about that, honestly.
That's an episode, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I mean.
No,
I want to hear.
We should do a round table on that.
Yeah.
Cinema, not television. We'd have to do a spin-off, or we can do a Facebook Live special event.
We can just do an Arenicast special.
Don't colonize my show, guys. Come on.
We can do whatever we
No, we're not calling. We're exporting it.
That's right.
What did you answer, Rajiv?
You said appropriately.
He said appropriately rated.
Yeah.
And everybody's okay. Your turn then, Rajiv.
Okay. So this one's hard and maybe a little unfair because there's so many varieties, and I'll give you an example. So this isn't it, but like brisket. So I'm a big fan of brisket. The best I've ever had, literally. He's one of my closest friends. He's a co-host on the show. But Jeff Manildi makes the best brisket I've ever had in my life. So I'm not going to ask that one because, I have a personal connection here, or there's a personal connection. So the thing is, under or overrated is pulled pork.
Well, before I answer, I just want to correct you a little bit. Tri-tip and brisket
Oh,
different.
I'm sorry. Tri-tip.
Right.
Tri-tip.
I don't want to make the barbecue people mad and, coming into the show and
Sorry.
saying all that kind of stuff.
Because brisket's a whole other thing. I'm so hungry.
Yeah, now I'm like
Just
starving
scrolling
here.
through it. Yeah, it's tri-tip. My bad, Jeff.
That's okay. It's regional. No, most people don't even know the tri-tip stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
thank
meant
you.
to say appropriately rated.
pulled
That's what I'm
pork.
saying.
Pulled pork.
Okay.
I've never had it, so I can't really comment on it.
Okay, go from just the aesthetic, the look, and the smell.
Overrated, fully overrated.
Oh my god.
I'm going to have to say underrated. I'm just going to say like meat in general is underrated in terms of like. Now, hear me out. I know that we're going to, people might be mad environmentally. I understand that. It doesn't mean when I say meat is underrated, in terms of like we should just have more of it. I think we should have less meat, obviously. I think that's important for the environment and stuff like that. But I think that's the very reason that it's underrated, is I think that people settle for cheap stuff. And because they don't treat it with the sacredness it deserves, you have it too often and you don't appreciate and savor the moments that are good, and you settle for something that's less than. So pulled pork done right, it's always going to be underrated because it's just going to
the right amount of char. I mean,
little crispy bits, the various sauces you can put on it.
Yep. It goes with everything.
Yeah.
Right. A little aside here, because I'm like feeling an internal conflict because I struggle with my meat eating from, sometimes it's ethical, sometimes it's environmental. And, part of my upbringing was we ate meat in our home because we're Christian. And in India, meat eating is a way Christians identify themselves and differentiate themselves from Hindu, particularly the Brahmanic strands, because that's where the whole caste thing is an issue. So as low caste people who are Christian, we're like, give me that burger. If I could wave my magic wand and be like a vegan, I probably would be. It's just a struggle.
No. If I'm going to take that magic wand, I'm going to make everyone eat meat in moderation so that none of us have to be vegan.
Or like there's magic meat. You don't have to kill anything.
Right. I'm fine with printed meat, 3D printed meat. If they figure that out,
totally.
I'm down with that. Like
I'm 100% down with it.
It's all about the method in which you cook it. So if you can take a bad piece of meat and make it wonderful. It's just the care.
Talk about desacralizing, right? Printed meat.
I mean that's most soul food, right? Is that cast off stuff that's made right.
Right. I mean the whole advent of chicken wings. Like no one did chicken wings, but now it is. Well, I guess there's a shortage now, but still, like it's all about the cooking. It's about the method, how to use all that stuff. Yeah. Now I'm super hungry.
What do you think, Casey? Underrated, overrated for pulled pork?
I said rated as is. It's fine as it is. I will say, so Jose and I just got back from vacation, and we were down in Palm Springs, which is my favorite place to rest. And we had the best burgers we've ever had down there at this place called The Heyday. But we also went to this other restaurant that I cannot remember the name of that had these pulled pork mac and cheese egg rolls. And that sounds so fat, and it was so delicious. And so if I could have pulled pork that way for forever, then it's like totally underrated because it was amazing. But yeah, there you go.
Mac and cheese egg rolls. That sounds delicious.
But that's the beauty of pulled pork, man.
That's right. Just put it in there with some mac and cheese.
Put it in stuff. Yeah.
Well, if we ever do an ethics series, I think we should definitely talk about the ethics of eating meat, and I would love to explore that with you all. So ready for mine? I'm taking it's completely away from food and very theoretical.
All right.
Post-pandemic learning.
Post-pandemic learning.
Define that.
So we hear a lot that, we've been through this whole thing together and that there's all these possibilities now that are available to us because of what we've been through. There's things we've learned. There's knowledge and wisdom that we've gained. as having lived through the pandemic. Is that overrated or underrated?
I mean, we're talking about the anticipation because we haven't experienced it yet, right?
Right. I'm talking about well, have we experienced learning as a result of the pandemic? We're starting to, maybe a little bit. So I'm talking about that whatever that is, whatever that will be. Is that underrated or overrated? And I know, like I said, it's highly abstract and theoretical, but just for the sake of conversation.
I think we're experiencing it though. Like I just had a conversation with my wife, and we were talking about how like insurance companies, because the televisits for medical visits are ending, that insurance companies are immediately cutting that off. Like we need to learn one lesson from that. And now like people who've had to travel to multiple states because of whatever condition that they have to go back to doing that. So like kids can't be in one place because they've got to travel from hospital to hospital, from state to state. That we're doing teleconferencing now, got to go back to that kind of life. And you know, what we've learned about office space and workspace and how flexible and fluid that is and all this stuff. I think we're learning it right now. I just think we're immediately unlearning it.
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. All of what Jeff has said. I think that the learning is underrated, but the hype of it is overrated. And I think that we are my biggest concerns. I mean, you can go back to some of our episodes during quarantine where I've said my biggest concern is that we would just, when we get back into things, act like it never happened. Humans are what they are. We love our routines. We love the ways in which we feel stuck. We sort of want to go back to those sorts of things. I hope some of us will be able to keep to our clear boundaries about what quarantine has given us, like a 40 or less hour work week, like more connection to our family and friends. If there's anything we should have learned, I think it's how much we need each other. We wanted to record in person this morning, but I'm feeling under the weather. And so I felt like it was my duty, because I love all of you, to not show up sick, which is something before quarantine I would have done. I'll just muscle through it. So there's like a respect for one another, a noticing of each other, a relying on each other that I think that we've gained that we should hold on to. That's what I would say.
So I think the potential for learning in relation to this pandemic can never be overrated, because it's really one of the richest opportunities that we've had as a human species. But I'm with Jeff. I think we're going to pick it up. You know, we're so habituated and addicted to certain destructive behaviors and patterns that, you know, we saw the frickin' sky clear up and waterways return life, and we're already at the same travel levels we were before the pandemic, and we're still in the pandemic. So yeah, I'm worried. I think we have some dark days ahead of us. I have hope, but I do feel like there are aspects of our society that are coming apart at the seams.
Yeah, I'm with all of you too. I think it's underrated. I mean, I hear people talking about revenge travel, which is like an interesting term. It's like revenge against whom? You know, against the planet, against the world, against the virus. Like, what does that even mean? But yet something has happened to us, and what I think is interesting about it is the way that this sort of connects to transition. Those of us who have migrated out of evangelical fundamentalist worlds, in a sense, this very real physical pandemic is in some ways connected to that experience of leaving and going into something new. And can you get there? Can you get into the new thing? That's part of what we're working out together as a world community. So with that, not that we always end with the big laughs. We start with in and out, and we end with the conversation on the pandemic. That will do it for us this week. If you enjoy Irenicast and would like to join the work we are doing, please consider donating to our PayPal link at irenicast.com/PayPal. We are committed to keeping the show free for listeners, but there are always costs involved, and your financial support helps out with that a lot. That's irenicast.com/PayPal. Irenicast is nonprofit, so your donations are tax deductible. And for more information on ways to partner with the show, please go to irenicast.com/support. Some of those ways include our Amazon affiliate link and, of course, our merch. You can support the show, however, by simply just making sure you've subscribed or followed the show on whatever platform you use to listen. And if the platform allows it, leave a rating and or review. So for this week, I'm Bonnie.
I'm Casey.
This is Rajiv.
And I'm Jeff.
Thanks for joining the conversation.